Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Titans as well as the latest episode of Van Helsing. Like always, if I'm talking about something that you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include a time when I start talking about each of the respective shows. So, for example, if you don't want to hear what I say about this week's episode of Titans, you can skip to what I had to say about this week's episode of Van Helsing. But the first thing I want to talk about is this week's episode of Titans. A great episode. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so break it down. I really appreciate that we are getting our introduction to Connor, aka Superboy, and I do like that he does get his entire episode, and I like how it ends up blending into like the main overarching story. But it is kind of interesting, obviously, you know. He is, because at first, like when he starts having memories, at first I'm like, whoa. Is he actually based on I was like, did they take a person and then made him into Superboy? But it's like, I thought they said he was a creation. It's like, no. And that's such an interesting element. I don't know if that ever, because obviously, you know, my only experience with Superboy is the little bit he's in Smallville as well as Young Justice. So I don't remember, I mean, to be fair, it's been a while since I've seen Young Justice, so because I have not touched any of season 3. So I wanted to go back and rewatch season 1 and 2 beforehand. Regardless, that's a whole tangent in itself. But the fact of the matter is, I don't think it ever came up about him having the two different members of the people he's made from. Because I was curious what route they were going about this. Because obviously you could tell, like, it's like he was getting beat by someone. I was like, wait, what's that? It seemed like a regular house. So I was like, that's not the Kent home. But then like he ends up going to like a small house in Kansas. I'm like, wait, that's Luther. I was like, oh, so I was like, I guess in this continuity, Lionel isn't rich. I guess maybe he never was. I think maybe Smallville's the only thing that pushed for Lionel being rich. Maybe traditionally in the comic books or whatever, maybe he's not. I mean, his dad did reference like, oh, I was a scientist or whatever. So like, obviously it kind of stems from that for Lex. There was even a girl in the picture, a little girl with red hair. Now in my mind, obviously I think a Tess, but I'm also thinking maybe Lena. I don't know which, because I think Tess was just a Smallville thing. Obviously I think his sister is always typically Lena, but I'm wondering would they ever touch on that? Probably not. Because it's probably that thing of like, obviously knowing that he exists in the world and everything, but we'll never get to even see what Lex looks like. But I actually lost my mind when I saw Mercy. I was like, because obviously this is Cadmus and Mercy, which obviously those are things that have popped up in Supergirl. Cadmus has been a big part of Supergirl, and even Mercy had popped up last season, was kind of like, you know, a prominent season for her in that regard. But nevertheless, once again, going down tangents, I got to look into it, but the actress who played Eve seems so damn familiar, and I don't know, I didn't stick around for the credits, so I should have, so I could catch her name, but she looks so damn familiar, and I just can't remember where I know her from. But regardless, the point I was making is the fact is that he has a blend of both memories, and that kind of was like, oh, I thought that was really interesting. And it's not just like, oh, what they remember, even, well, because it picks up in like their knowledge as well. So to a certain extent, he could pull from Lex's knowledge, which is like, okay, so you literally have all the powers of Superman and the brain of Lex Luthor, which that in itself is a deadly, deadly combination. But I just thought that was kind of interesting. I'm wondering, because I like I said, it's like, it pulls a little bit, especially from the Young Justice route of like, because obviously like, Connor in that was like, oh, I want to meet Superman, which obviously if you remember the little bit I do remember about early Young Justice, that was an issue because Superman was super like, yeah, I'm not going to be around this kid, which was pretty shitty on his part. But regardless, I did love the fact is that Connor, you know, is immediately drawn to that, you know, Superman t-shirt, and he goes and saves that lady because he's trying to get money, and it's like, hey, and it's like, oh, are you okay? And she's like, yeah, because he's got the robber by the neck, and it's like, she's like, yeah, he tried to rob me for money. And Connor's like, you have money? Throws it to him. It's like, can I have it? She's like, please don't hurt me. And he dates, he's like, thank you, and walks away. And he gets his shirt. You see him later on strutting down. I love it. That legitimately made me laugh out loud because he is like a child at this point in time. Because the way Eve explains it is he has the mind of a 2-year-old. Now that's interesting in itself. Eve, immediately my brain goes like Eve Tessmacher, like from Supergirl, but obviously, well, it might be kind of the same character, just different name or whatever. I mean, Watson might be her real last name or whatever. But it was just kind of interesting because she's the one behind all of this. It's interesting, you know, because obviously, you know, going into this, what Lex's motivation was is because he wanted to make a Superman of his own. I figured he wanted to make a Superman with a little bit of his own DNA because he wants the Superman clone he makes to be more like him, which is interesting that this is coming up because obviously, like, spoilers for last season of Supergirl, a version of Kara was created. Kind of it combined a little bit of this storyline, kind of like a Lex / Superboy dynamic with a little bit of a Red Sun storyline. So it's actually kind of interesting that we get this storyline now, like after last season of Supergirl. I just think that's just kind of fascinating. We actually break it down and think of it like that. But regardless. But I thought it was more so in line of like, oh, Lex is like, I made him so he'd be a little bit more like me. But it's like he needed someone else's DNA to kind of ground the alien DNA. And it's like, well, why not me? Probably because maybe in his inflated ego, like why not make it? I mean, maybe eventually that became his reasoning too. Like, why use anyone else's DNA when my DNA is great? I'm smart. I'm a genius. Why not pass it on to this person that I can easily manipulate and mold into who I want them to be? Like I said, very similar to the Supergirl, the more so not red, well, obviously the Red Daughter storyline that went down in Supergirl, you know. So regardless, it was interesting, you know, seeing that aspect of him that, you know, it's not just the memories drive him to be a little bit more like, you know, the respected person, because obviously he does very heroic things, kind of showing you that Clark side of things. It's actually interesting because even Lex's dad kind of broke it down and was kind of explaining, like, he basically says that like Lex he's always been a genius and stuff like that, but there's always been a little bit of something missing from him, that moral compass. That's what Clark represents, you know, I mean, and I think that's something that has to be considered too. I mean, it also depends on when those memories were taken. The DNA was taken. It was probably taken from an older Clark who's experienced everything, growing up in Kansas, having Jonathan and Martha Kent as parents. You know, because the thing is, because it's always a thing. Because obviously we know that, you know, there is a world that exists where Clark is raised by the Luthors. They present that in Smallville. I don't know if that's a thing typically in the comic books or not, but I definitely know about it only because of Smallville and whatnot. But regardless, it's that thing of like, because the thing is like, because I was about to say, like, if it was taken from a younger, like, because I'm wondering like how much of that is embedded in his DNA, that good nature. It's like, no, like who you are, like no one. And I think that's the thing that, you know, some people will make the argument, you know, of like, oh, some people are born good, some people are born evil. I think I tend to lean into the lane of like, it's more nurture versus nature, rather than like everyone is born very neutral and your surroundings and the people around you affect you. And that's even what Eve is going into about like how the people Connor meets is going to decide who he is. He already has these two warring natures, which is already bad enough in any person, but that'd be drawn by such polar opposite, you know, identities. The identity of Clark Kent, good and righteousness, and the side of Lex that is smart but borderline psychopathic, you know, who literally kind of, it's like the 10 men without a heart, you know. Clark represents the power and the heart, whereas Lex represents kind of the rage and the smarts to a certain extent. So it's just interesting when you know, having those two warring sides, which obviously it's, you know, very true to life considering those two butt heads so much. They are arch nemesis after all. So it's like to be made from the DNA of the arch nemesis like that. Because like I said, I was curious what route they were going to go with, you know, what version of him that they were going to make with Connor and whatnot. So obviously I love the farmhouse scene. I mean, not the farmhouse scene, because I meant to talk about that too. The Kent farmhouse is literally like a little ways down the road, where she never got to meet John and Martha Kent. He never got to actually meet them. I'm curious like what kind of effect that would have on him. But regardless, the fact is interesting because like obviously he has memories of Clark. I don't know how many people in this universe know who Superman is. Like, does even Lex know Clark's DNA? He probably was like, oh, I took Superman's DNA, because everyone kept saying Superman. No one at any point said Clark Kent, because he never brought up the whole like, oh, memories of someone else, because he's like, wait, there's this Superman. It's a Superman person, Clark. That would have been interesting to be like, wait, Clark? That's Superman's real name? But that didn't come up. I think they did that on purpose to kind of avoid a complicated situation like that. Not like it's that big of a deal, but I think they were still pretty smart about not doing that, because that'd probably open up a whole can of worms for Superman in his universe. That'd be a whole thing. But regardless, I like the whole, you know, like I said, aspect of him actually protecting Lex's dad, and obviously showcasing his abilities, the bulletproofness, the super speed, everything on slow-mo, the superhuman strength. I love it like when he pushed someone through the wall and you see him almost kind of like super speeding yet almost kind of levitating at the same time when he was, because his feet aren't even touching. I don't know. It's just a badass moment. Then like they're trying to like use tear gas or whatever. He sucks it up and uses his super breath, that was pretty. Because that's the thing, like because he isn't as strong as Superman. Because he is half human, he is only probably half as strong as Superman. And I don't know many of his abilities. Like, does he only get a fraction of Superman's ability? Does he have all of them? That's the question. Because we didn't see the heat vision, but we see that that's something that Crypto has. So, which is pretty badass. The dude has a gun. Crypto uses the heat vision on it. It's like, yes, yes, and yes. I don't know if that's typically Crypto's story, that he's an experiment. Like I said, I know, once again, an example I can pull from is Smallville. Smallville was, I think it might have been an experiment situation. I want to say it was a Cadmus thing too. So I wonder, are the super pet things, or would it be because Streaky and all that is probably just specifically a comic book stuff. I don't know if that's necessarily transferred over. I know there's been references to Streaky and Supergirl. There was a moment they made a reference to Streaky, but that was it. It was never oh, Streaky, the super cat or whatever. But, there have been instances, live action wise, of Crypto. So I'm wondering, I don't know if there's ever been any live action adaptations of the Super Pets in any shape or form. I don't know if that's purely a comic book thing, or even that's just a cartoon thing. I know there's literally an entire cartoon dedicated, because it's Crypto the Super Doll. Regardless, I'm once again going on a bit of a tangent, but I was curious, what, because I'm trying to remember. I know in Smallville he was made from meteor fragments. He was made from kryptonite. So I'm curious, was that Cadmus? Because I'd assume so. So I'm wondering, is that always his backstory, that he's an experiment, much like Superboy? That's interesting if that's the case. I guess for whatever reason, I just thought, I don't know, because it's not like he's a Kryptonian dog or whatever. So it makes sense for him to always be a Cadmus experiment. Well, I'm going on a huge tangent, so I do apologize. But it was interesting when he got to meet Eve, and obviously, it's scary because it's you have an unstoppable machine. It gets revealed later on, but it does. He obviously has Superman's weaknesses of kryptonite too. I'm assuming, because he is part Kryptonian. I'm wondering, would magic have an even more effect on him because he is half human, and plus he's a Kryptonian? Because it seems like that magic just seems like it works on Kryptonians regardless. It was kind of interesting to see that dynamic between Eve and, because Connor's so confused trying to learn who he is. Because obviously it's I want to meet Superman. It might not be the easiest thing to do right now because he doesn't even know you exist, which I'd love to see that dynamic. But I don't know if that's something they'll ever touch on. To be fair, it's been answered in Young Justice, so I don't know if they necessarily did that. But regardless, once again, a bit of a tangent. I am curious though, because he wants to meet Lex, which obviously he's you don't want to do that. He's, insinuating he's a bad guy. I also thought it was kind of interesting. The fact is that it's oh, are you like my mom? And she's no, which is well, the name Eve and everything, maybe that's the point they're kind of implying and stuff like that. Oh, giving birth to this clone. She laid the groundwork, and basically Lex kind of took it from there, and she kind of makes it seem hey, Lex did that, he took what she started, but as truth be told, they both kind of went hand in hand. And the fact of the matter is, because she even says it later on, because she feels bad, because obviously she's telling him not to go down the route of being a hero. It's a combination of stuff where oh, that guy's taking his girlfriend, and she's no, and Connor wants to step up, but she's no, you don't do that, because it's you're going to draw too much attention to yourself. Plus what she says later on, I think, it kind of immediately makes me think of stuff Jonathan was telling Clark and Man of Steel, how to go about things. And, so that's interesting. It kind of puts Connor in this weird space of he has three different routes to go, where Eve is telling him to basically be his own person, but don't be Superman, don't be Lex, just be your own person. And that in itself is complicated thing, because now you're being driven by three different personalities or identities: to be Superman, to be Lex, to be yourself. Do you exist in that in-between area? Do you take the best of both worlds? Will you inadvertently end up taking the worst of both worlds? I don't know. That's a complicated, very, very, very complicated thing. And Eve is trying to show, Connor who Lex is. The fact is that how far he's willing to go, kind of even showing Connor who he is. It's I'm not trying to show you that you're some monster or anything like that. In fact, I'm trying to show you who and what you are and what you're capable of. The fact of the matter is, why'd you hurt those scientists? Oh, they were hurting and experimenting on crypto. You wanted it to stop. Oh, why did you hurt those guys back at Lex's dad's place? Oh, because they were hurting him. So it's you jump to help people. That shows who your nature is. because, you know, for Eve, she feels bad because it's like I said, she went along with Lex because she was like, even her scientific curiosity of like, what would happen? And she's like, at any point, I wanted to be that one person that was still good, but I was driven by my scientific nature of wondering, well, what could happen? What could be, you know? So she feels responsible. So making sure that Connor gets away, I guess, in her way, and making sure that he doesn't go down the route of Lex at the very least. You know, once again, don't even be Superman. Don't use your powers, but just live your life. Live a good life full of joy and happiness. You know, that's all she wants for Connor. And so it's her way of making up for the mistake of like, you know, it's like, you know, because at first she tried to say like, not, you know, science isn't bad, basically trying to imply like it comes down to the person who uses it. You know, it's just like a weapon on its own isn't bad until someone takes it. You know, that's kind of like the point. But for her, it's like, no, science is bad. It can be bad. There have been examples, many examples of science going bad, not just because, you know, it's, you know, in this particular case, it's Lex who had, you know, bad intentions. And I'm sure he'll justify those intentions, whatever the case may be, but still. So luckily Connor gets away and he's driven to that point of like, yeah, I can't step in. I'm not supposed to. And lo and behold, tying it back into the episode, I figured this is the route they were going the moment they introduced Connor. I was like, oh, so that's how we're going to tie into that whole Jason situation, which immediately my brain goes, well, is he actually going to save Jason? Because now he might not, and that might be a problem later on. I was actually halfway expecting Eve and Connor to escape together, and then we kind of time skip like a couple months or whatever, and then we catch up to where the present day is with the whole Jason situation. Because like, if you didn't catch it last episode, I was assuming it was going to be Corey that ends up catching him. Like maybe in this moment she flies, but why would she kind of jump to that? Like I said, that depends on if they even make it that she can fly in this continuity. Because obviously like, and it's kind of a little bit of a small deal thing because obviously he's still fresh at this, so he still doesn't have all the abilities that Superman has. So he's obviously uses his, you know, he jumps really far and high to catch Jason, but he doesn't actually fly. So it's like, does he not have the ability to fly? Will he eventually learn the ability to fly? That's a whole thing. So that was still pretty dope. And Jason's like, yo, I don't know who you are, but thank you for saving me. And lo and behold, Mercy shows up. She captured Crypto, which is kind of depressing. I hope he's able to like get Crypto free and everything, because that just sucks. But he ends up getting shot by kryptonite bullets. Luckily, Corey and Dick are there along with Jason. It's like, yo, this dude saved my life. So hopefully they take him back to the tower and everything. Which Eve did make a point of like, don't also put down roots, which is like maybe he'll kick it with the Titans, which that's going to be an interesting thing. My mind also goes an interesting route. Since there's no Miss Martian, there's no Magan in this, we might go down a route of Connor and Rachel, maybe. I don't know if that's something they would do or not. I was thinking, especially because Rachel and Gar are kind of in a complicated situation, and there's a little bit of camaraderie. It might not be the full-blown, like, anything like relationship or anything like that, but that'd be interesting if that's a route they went. But obviously, it's the thing more so of, like, they're both in the position of, oh, we both don't know how to control our powers. I say that now that I'm thinking about it. It's like, I don't know how old the actor is who plays Connor. I didn't look into it, so that might be weird. Because I know the actress who plays Rachel is fairly young, so that might not even be something they go down that route. I don't know. Actually, I don't know how. I think, yeah, I'm pretty sure she's fairly young, so that's why I'm like, regardless of the situation. That's just kind of, but at the very least, it don't even have to be like a relationship thing. Maybe it'll just be a bond. And the fact is that her and Gar are kind of on the outs because of last episode to a certain degree. They might gain like I said, camaraderie from the fact is that they both kind of have powers. They don't really know themselves. They kind of lose control. Like obviously he deals with the Lex side of things. She deals with her dad's side of things, which is whatever's going on. So like there's a little bit of a war in both of them. And I think that'd be a dynamic they really I would kind of expect them to kind of lean into. So I think that'd be pretty dope. So I'm very interested to see where all this ends up taking us next episode. Because this is going to be an interesting introduction to all people. Like, wait a minute. He's like Superman? Wait, what? Especially they find out like, oh, I'm also part Lex Luthor. Wait, what? If that conversation comes up, because it depends on how much Connor decides to talk about, I'm assuming Eve's still alive, but eventually I get the feeling like they might kill Eve because they might blame her. Because obviously Mercy didn't believe her when it was like, oh, he tried to kill, which, I mean, obviously he did choke you at one point, but obviously, like, you let him go, I know it. So I'm sure they're going to keep Eve around because they need her, but there's always a possibility Lex might be like, you know what, take care of her, like, she's too much trouble. I'm assuming, well, especially because he might figure like, oh, I don't need her anymore because I made one clone. If I can't get it back, which he's going to strive like hell to get it back. Might even be a situation of hiring Deathstroke to do that, considering like, oh, you're already gunning for Titans. Just make sure you get my little experiment back while you're trying to get your daughter back. That whole thing. So, like I said, I'm very, very interested to see where all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. And now moving on to this week's episode of Van Helsing. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, let's start off with the whole Jack storyline of like her going out with Chad, you know, to get to some supplies. They end up getting attacked because Tabby ran off on her own. Circumstances, I was kind of almost hoping there'd be a circumstance. I mean, this is kind of weird to say hoping, but it would have been an interesting situation because they don't know the full scope of like once you're turned back, there's no ever turning back into a vampire. So Tabby was never she was in danger of being, you know, straight up killed. But if the moment a vampire bit her, it would have been like, it would have been sick and disgusted from her blood. But obviously that's something we didn't get to see. It was actually pretty badass to see Jax kind of step in. She's still kind of not used to kind of doing full-blown badass. I mean, she was already a badass before, but now she's going full-blown kind of doing a little Vanessa style, like her rolling across the car, using a sword and everything. She's going full-blown action hero. It's pretty badass. But she goes in to save Tabby and gets bit in the neck. And rather than turning, she stabs herself in the chest. I was like, wow. And then, you know, Chad and Monica decided to burn her body because it's like, we need to make sure that she's dead along with all the other day walkers because that's what she would want. And it's interesting because they wait, there's a missing day walker, and here's this lady, she's human. And lo and behold, they go back, and who walks out of fire other than Jax? Now, the reason why I speak through that like that in particular is because, sadly, I already knew about it. I wish I hadn't, like, this is like the only season I've seen of, like, Van Helsing trailer-wise. I wish I hadn't, because the Violet, like, I knew Violet and, you know, Jack were special before going into the season because of the trailer. I didn't know the exact circumstances, them being Van Helsings, but the moment I found out that that Violet was a Van Helsing, I'm like, that must mean that Jax is one too. Jack is one too. So it was like, you know, it kind of ruined it for me a little bit, but still, it still doesn't, you know, explain everything because it's like, well, even if that's the case, like, what the hell is that all about? Side note, it kind of sucks too. It's like, couldn't your powers have been activated a little bit sooner because you were literally burning when you came out. That was gnarly. She came out like all burned up, and then like her flesh is starting to heal up and grow back. It's like, oh, because even at the end she hadn't fully recovered from all the burns. I mean, to be fair, like, this is her first time regenerating and stuff like that, so obviously, it's not going to be 100% of a clean heal. She got, I'd say, 85%, I'd say. It's actually kind of interesting. I mean, it's more in line with Vanessa because Vanessa had a full-blown die before her powers activated. I'm wondering had Violet actually died beforehand, because Scarlet never actually died at any point in time. It just took, I guess, because it's there. I guess Vanessa jump-started Scarlet's abilities, but, like, what about Jack and Violet? Like, that must have been that at some point Violet must have died, but Hanson had maybe kept it from her that she had. So, because the moment she got bitten, her, she didn't have to go full-blown dying. But to be fair, maybe it's just the fact is that Jack killed herself before her powers could kick in, you know? I mean, I guess, you know, first time around, it takes a while. So that's why I'm wondering about that. I mean, because it took Vanessa being bit. Well, because to be fair, even after she was in her coma, she still healed from her wounds. It just took Flesh biting her back in season 1, you know, after the Rising to make her wake up after a 3-year coma. So, I don't know, it's still kind of a little bit of a mystery of like how exactly that whole activation works exactly. Because it seems like it's literally worked 4 different ways potentially, but that'll be something we kind of dive into, because let's not also forget, like I said, because that must mean that they have to be experiments or something, because Vanessa's the way she is because of an experiment, because no other Van Helsing is like her. Lily wasn't like her. Scarlet only became like her because Vanessa bit her and basically transferred the mutation in her blood that's mixed with the dark one. So that must mean that they must be black tech experiments too. I mean, Violet would make sense. I mean, literally Hanson has her. But what about Jack? How did that hold? Like, not unless she got adopted ahead of time or something like that. Probably her parents weren't her actual parents. Like, Scarlet's dad wasn't actually her dad or her mom. It was just people that were tasked with taking care of her. So similar situation in that same regard, I guess. So I'm like I said, I'm just interested how there's so many damn Van Helsings running around, and it's like, oh, that's impressive. Obviously, Chad tells her, it's like, hey, Vanessa is just like you. I don't know what the hell this is all about, but you might be the potential fix for all of this. It's actually interesting because she starts to feel the pull, which I think is interesting. Maybe it's because she's come in contact with Vanessa and she felt something there, but she wasn't quite sure. But now that pull is there, because it doesn't seem like, I mean, we haven't spent enough time with Violet yet, but Violet doesn't seem like she's felt it yet. But maybe once you come in contact with Vanessa, then that bond is created, kind of like she sires you to it almost an extent. Probably not, because the whole siring situation happened in season 2 with everyone else, because they felt that bond, the find Vanessa, they were all drawn to that. Everyone she had ever cured, it created that bond between them. So this situation with Jack seems different, in what ways, I don't know. It's pretty badass. She gets to walk off with Scarlet's sword and the giant crossbow that Chad had left her. So that's definitely going to be interesting to see what that ends up being. So there's that. Then we get reunited with Axel. I was like, I'm so glad to finally see what the hell he's up to on the road. And lo and behold, who does he run into kind of driving in the car acting like a dick? None other than the actor. It's Richard Harmon. He's the actor who plays Murphy on the 100. I'm like, it's Murphy. I was like, that dude gets typecast as kind of an asshole, doesn't he? It seems like it. But it seems like, oh, he's so worried about his outfit and his car and everything. Him and Axel kind of hit it off a little bit, because it's like, hey, come back to my place. It's like, whoa, this place is banging, dude. So it turns into a whole interesting conversation of obviously it seems like he's a little bit of an elitist asshole who's taking advantage of the apocalypse. He got to kind of live it up a little bit and kind of, enjoy. It's like, oh, can't let the apocalypse slow you down one bit. Even to the point, what was it he called it? Skee ball shooting, where he was basically taking vampire heads and shooting, sending them flying and then shooting them, which is super morbid in its own right. But regardless, everyone's got their own thing during the apocalypse, I guess. But regardless, it led to some interesting conversations, because we know where Axel's head still is after all of this. And the fact is that he's still dead set on revenge. He talks about the whole thing of if he ever saw Vanessa again, he was going to kill her. That's what this is all about, because he still blames Vanessa for everything. It's like, oh, you didn't stop her and whatnot. Obviously, Vanessa potentially is going down her own right. I'm doing it again. I literally did that in a different recording, talking about right instead of route. I don't know why I keep doing that. I'm just messing up big time. She went down her own route and, trying to be the light. She's trying not to kill anymore, which obviously that's going to be interesting in contrast with Axel, who's going to be super wanting you dead, which is not going to be the easiest thing to kill Vanessa, considering the fact that she's super fast heals. But I mean, even she bleeding enough could die. Probably lop off her head, because she's like a daywalker. As if you chop off her head, she's probably dead. There's probably no coming back from that. So... But still, because he wants revenge because he lost Scarlet and blames her, which, you need someone to blame under those circumstances, but still. It was interesting, though, that Max was telling him, hey, you gotta let all that stuff in your heart go just because you kind of, enjoy life a little better. You gotta just let, not necessarily, but almost borderlining some Hakuna Matata type of shit, so there's that. So... like I said, they're hitting it off. Then we circle back to Phil, and I still always want to refer to him as Flesh, because it's what you get first introduced to him as. So it kind of stuck in my head for a long time. But Phil and Jolene finally track down Jennifer at the Loveland. But obviously things are kind of weird, because it's like, okay, buses are coming in and out, but they're younger people, not just older people and stuff or injured people. So it's like, what's the hell is up with that? It's healthy people. So it's like, what's up with that? They end up running into Jennifer as they try to sneak in, and Jennifer is obviously shocked to see Phil. I'm curious what it is because Jolene tries to explain to Jennifer, but Jennifer is kind of like, well, to be fair, like after what she lost and what she'd been through, what Phil did, there's no way she's going to be too keen on listening to everything because it's like, oh, you don't understand what I've lost and what I've been through. I mean, because that's just from what Phil told, like up to that point. Beyond that, we don't know what Jennifer's story is, what led to her getting to Loveland. I mean, because she even talked about the fact that you don't know what I've done to survive here, and it's like, what does that mean? Like I said, how did she end up in Loveland in the first place? Because you need to apparently do some bad stuff, which I love that the first person they run into in Loveland is the freaking guard that Phil shot to get here, and it's like, oh, geez, of course. Which it turns out he's not a complete and utter asshole. He's actually kind of a cool, good guy because he understands like why Phil is here. It's like, oh, you're here because of your wife. It's like, I kind of get that, but obviously I can't cut you any slack because the warden's here. And lo and behold, we find out that Max is the warden. I didn't see that coming. I was like, that's interesting. I thought that was just going to be some side thing that Axel's a part of, and then eventually him and Max go their separate ways. But it's like, nah. Max runs Loveland, and he's kind of doing his own thing. He's the thing that they use as a repellent for vampires. He sniffs it like a drug, which is interesting. Which, I mean, does he not know about the side effect of that situation or just making people go a little crazy? I mean, maybe that's why he is crazy like he is, but it doesn't seem like it's the same crazy as the Denver crazy when you did that. But maybe it's because he's sniffing it and not injecting it in the normal means, so maybe it's not hitting him. Maybe it's going a little past his bloodstream. Well, no, because you think it would hit him harder because he's taking it like that. But I mean, I don't know. I'm not a scientist, and just because I would expect that to make it hit his body harder. But maybe just because if you inject it, it goes to the bloodstream a lot faster, obviously, because it's going directly into the bloodstream. So maybe that's different than like sniffing it like a drug. Regardless of the situation, he's there because he's trying to figure out this whole situation about Jolene and Phil. And he's also wondering if our favorite guard dude is in on it because he starts to think that maybe this is some twisted love triangle that it's like, oh, that you went after him and he followed him here to Loveland to come after you. But it's like, nah, you got that completely wrong. Luckily for Jolene, he ended up shooting Phil first. I mean, granted, that's never a lucky situation, but it still hurt like hell. But luckily, Phil got back up. And like I said, it's just some very interesting circumstances of trying to figure out what's going on. But Jolene, showing you how super smart she is, she pretty much figured out that, like, obviously he's up to some shady stuff, basically saying Denver sent us because they're, like, obviously she kind of pieced together, like, all the trucks coming in and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, he's selling the supplies off somewhere else. Why specifically, what he's up to, kind of doing a little bit of a side hustle. It's like, oh, they got him working here, kind of overseeing everything, but he's kind of shying off and getting a little extra benefits on the side by sending it off elsewhere. Sorry. That's enough to keep them alive, which obviously they don't all know what exactly went down in Denver, which luckily for Jolene, because her lie is able to stay afloat because Max doesn't know, but the guard says there's rumors going around about what went down in Denver, that Denver has fallen, which we don't know to what scale. We know everything that went down, but like I brought it up before, like, what about Katie? Like, how many other people survived? I still kind of wager that Katie's literally the only one that made it out of there. Maybe there were other people too. Because there's everyone that Axel had dropped off in Denver last season. Our trio and the baby. Did they make it out? Maybe they made it out before everything went to shit. I don't know. That last time we saw them, they were trying to reunite with each other last season. Is that something we're just going to drop? I seriously don't know. Obviously, Jolene doesn't know that Hanson has Sarah. I mean, it's actually it would have been actually beneficial if they were able to get in contact, because obviously Hanson's going to want them taken care of, because it's going to help keep, Sarah motivated. Because if something happens to Jolene, Sarah's just going to quit working with Hanson. Well, to be fair, last time we left off with Sarah, she's locked up in a cage, but regardless. So, like I said, that's a lot. And then on top of that, it's like, oh, Axel shows up, and I'm like, okay, are they going to meet? Obviously, Jolene makes a scene to make it so that Axel sees her, and then he turns and he also sees Phil, but he's not acting upon anything right now, because I don't think it's a situation if he doesn't care right now. Maybe he's waiting to figure things out, because the guy was like, what was that about? And she's like, nothing. it was supposed to be something, but maybe it was for nothing. Because I think Axel's trying to be like, okay, wait, what's going on? Because obviously he's like, wait, you run this place, what's up? You got me getting you ammunition and stuff? Like, okay. So, or is it just because he is so intent on kind of leaving behind Vanessa and everything, because he's so pissed at her, he's willing to cut ties with everyone and everything connected? Or, like I said, is he circling back around because it's like, oh, I'll help out Phil, I'll help out Jolene, help, figure that whole situation now. Obviously, he can't really do much on his own either because there's a shit ton of guards and stuff here, so I think he is potentially biding his time. But still, I'm very curious to see where the situation is going to take us. Is Jennifer going to forgive Phil? I mean, it has been a good couple years, but I mean, after such a brutal situation, it's not going to be the easiest thing. But even, Phil wasn't really expecting her to forgive him. It's just kind of like, I came here to rescue you. I just needed to. Which she also saw him recover from the bullet wound. Well, for one, she sees, hey, he's human again. What's up with that? Oh, wait, he took a bullet. He's still alive. What's up with that? And even, Brett being kind of effed up, being like, oh, let's find out how much he can take, which, okay. So, luckily, Jolene was able to kind of sweet talk her way around this, like I said, by pretending like she knows what's going on, because she does. She was able to kind of shows her powerful deductive reasoning, kind of piecing it together, like the clues of what she saw and kind of surmise it to be a certain thing. And it's like, luckily, it was enough to get Max to be like, all right, I guess I'm not, gonna have to kill you right now because I need to make sure you're well kept until I can make sure Denver actually sent you, but they're static on the radio. Obviously, you can't get in contact with Denver because shit is the way it is in Denver. And even Jolene was asking the dude, is like, is the radio actually messed up or were you actually covering for me? Which he was like, shut up, which is like, it could be a combination of the two, but regardless. Like I said, a lot of interesting things that kind of tied us over. I'm curious to see where this ends up all taking us going forward into the next episode, finding out what it is that, Max is up to. And what's this going to end up tying into Black Tech, whether they're able to get in contact with him or not. It's just the only facility that they're mining that stuff from. That, like I said, that was mainly for Denver, but it's like, yeah, Denver doesn't exist anymore, so it doesn't really help. Plus, it also makes there's a chance that, it makes the people that take it psychotic, so there's that. So, and like I said, we'll see where it all takes us going into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.